I got to say, it's really great to see a movie where storytelling really saves lives. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, and this is the Q&A. My agenda is simple. Each week, I plan to bring you in-depth insights into the creative process of storytelling. Folks, I was really pleased today to have writer-director Philippe Lacôte to join me to discuss his latest film, Night of the Kings. It's kind of amazing, some of these Zoom casts in which Philippe was joining us from Ivory Coast and halfway around the world, and it was just a great conversation. I really love his movie. It's just a wild escape into kind of this other mythic universe where you get into stories within stories based in history and local folklore and myth. And, there's a modern element, there's a historical element, and we talk about that today. So it was really fascinating, and it was a heck of a discussion. And I know you'll dig this episode. Of course, if you missed this event, you could always sign up backstory.net/events. This was an event we did with Philippe in which folks all around the nation were able to see the movie and get access first to the Q&A on YouTube. But obviously we released these things afterwards, about a day afterwards, in the Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith podcast and iTunes and Spotify, and of course on the Backstory Magazine YouTube page. But you could sign up there in case you want to come to the next one. And speaking of cool things to do online, I hope you'll check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. We recently published issue 42. There is so much cool stuff in it. I couldn't even name it all right now, but you could go take a look at our table of contents over at backstory.net, and I hope you will. Of course, you could read our free issue over there and test drive us as well. And if you like what you see, you could use coupon code SAVE5. That's SAVE and the number 5. That will save you $5 off a subscription to Backstory Magazine, and it'll give you access to any new content we produce, and also our archive, which goes back to around issue 29. And we're going to continue adding older issues into it as well when we have time. But look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and my YouTube watchers support my passion project. So thanks for becoming a subscriber. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right into our interview with writer-director Philippe Lacôte about his latest film, Night of the Kings. So Philippe, it's good to see you. How are you doing?
Fine. And you?
Good. I the great thing about Zoom is you could have these conversations halfway around the world. So this is cool. You're joining us from Ivory Coast today, correct?
Yeah, from Abidjan.
Excellent. Well, I loved your movie. And before we get into talking about Night of the Kings, I want to start kind of with your past as a filmmaker and breaking in. At what point in your life did you know that you wanted to become a filmmaker?
I didn't make cinema school, so I learned at working in different way in different department of cinema. But for me, it started at the beginning because when I was child, my house was near a cinema, the Magic Cinema, and always my mother put me in this cinema when she wants to go to buy something. So she came after 10 minutes or after 20 minutes or after 40 minutes. So it was difficult to watch a complete film for me. And it was more Bollywood and Bruce Lee films. And I decided to be a director. One day we were at a screening, a film of Bruce Lee, and there was a bad guy behind Bruce Lee with a knife, and he wanted to kill Bruce Lee. And a spectator jumped on the stage and killed the bad guy with a knife on the screen.
Yeah, really?
I said, yeah, really. And we stopped the screening. Everybody was very angry about this guy. And after I say, oh, what is this medium? What is this art? What is this material? Who can be in the same time very concrete, very like a dream.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love this image of somebody slashing a screen with a knife to defend good old Bruce Lee, who's pretty tough. He doesn't need that much defense, but that's a great story. That's awesome. It's always interesting to hear breaking in stories because it's not easy to go become a director. I know that you had worked with some short films for a while, and you also got into some documentary filmmaking. From kind of looking you up, it seems like one of your breaks was your 2013 film African Metropolis, which was a collection of 6 short films, and you had one of them. Tell us about that experience, because it seems like that was like a really good professional experience for you.
Yes, I started with short films. I was projectionist. I worked on distribution in a lab and in production. But in the same time, I made my short film with friend, with young cinematographer from Bulgaria who live in France. Different people who they were amazing because it was a sort of experimentation, total experimentation, and we made our first film in 35 millimeters, and after I was documentarist, but the experience with African Metropolis was very nice because it was we were 7 directors from Africa, try to making a portrait of their city. Of course, I made the portrait of my city, Abidjan, and I made a sort of diary, a very small film about the last travel, one of the last travel of Jean-Michel Basquiat, because Jean-Michel Basquiat traveled 2 years before his death, I think, in Ivory Coast, in Abidjan. And he was very interested by mystical things, by art things. He had a friend here, who is a painter also, and they traveled a lot. And I wanted to tell something about this diary.
And so, just because you said a second ago that you were a projectionist, are there any funny projection stories that you want to tell us when all hell broke loose in the projection booth? Because I know that definitely happens sometimes behind the scenes.
Yeah, a projectionist, it's a funny job because there's a lot of accident. One thing we had, it was very common in our cinema, Le Cratère at Toulouse, to screen each Wednesday film for schools, for young boys, young girls, 9, 10s, and sometimes it was cartoons from east part, from Czechia, from Poland, and sometimes the film arrived without a French voice. So the boss of the cinema asked us 2 projectionists to play different voices. So it was like this.
So wait, did you have microphones that would go over the sound?
Yeah, we had
system?
microphones, and we were one side of the stage and one side of the screen, and we said, "Oh, how are you? Yes, my name is Bobby." And so it was.
That's awesome. Just one last question on that. Did you write out a script in advance that you followed, or did you do it improvisationally?
No. We made an improvisation because we didn't know the film. It was at the last minute. So We watched the film one time, and after it was a sort of improvisation.
Okay, well, the last film to talk about before Night of the Kings would be your 2014 thriller Run, about a man who assassinates a prime minister. And this is your first feature film. What was your biggest lesson on Run as a director? And a writer, of course.
Trying to engage more the audience.
And what were the challenges? Like, how did you figure out ways to engage the audience further?
The challenge with Run was tell the history of my country after 20 years of military conflict and civil war. I wanted to follow the trajectory of a young boy to say something about this chaos. For me today, the film was between the documentary, the fiction, and too much experimental and too much complex in his writing, even if I like this film. And it's for this I decided with Night of the Kings to build an immersion for the spectator, to put the spectator inside.
Let's get to it right now. So tell us how you first got the idea for Night of the Kings, which, it basically, what anyone could tell from the trailer is that, it's inside a prison. And basically they have a series of traditions, and there's a new storyteller that they anoint named Roman. They name him Roman, and it's his job to tell stories throughout the night. And the question is, will he live throughout the night? So when did you first get the idea for Night of the Kings?
Night of the Kings comes from a true story. In La Maca. La Maca is the biggest prison of Ivory Coast and one of the biggest and overpopulated prison in West Africa, because we have 5,000 prisoners for 1,500 places. So there's a lot of people. And I have a friend because I have a lot of friends who are or who were in prison. I'm very connected with prison. I have a childhood friend. He went out La Maca and he told me, I met him one night and he told me, in La Maca, we chose a prisoner and he's obliged to tell stories. And we call him Roman. And when I heard this story, I saw directly a dispositif, a character, and violence. And it was enough for me, I will say, to say, oh, there's something beyond this story. And this story was also connected with my own life, because when I was a child, my mother was in La Maca for political reason. So I traveled one day by week in a collective taxi, cross this forest. La Maca is inside the forest, Banco Forest. And for me, La Maca was like a kingdom with queens, with kings, with lackeys, because it's a very open prison, as you can see in Night of the Kings. We try to keep this idea, and it was very often it was possible to meet a prisoner, to discuss with a prisoner, to have some interaction. So I kept a strong image of this place, and a personal feeling. So it was these two elements gave me the power to write Night of the Kings.
Well, that makes sense. Right now I want to talk about your creative habit for writing. How important is outlining to your process when you sit down to write your screenplay? Do you start with an outline, or do you just start writing your script?
I'm a special script writer because I have my way of writing. I have this idea first, and after I work during 1 year, make research, trying to read a lot of stories about people who were in prison, trying to watch different films, to have an actuality image of prisons. So a lot of visual things at the beginning. And I was, for the script of Night of the Kings, I worked in Torino Film Lab. It's a lab in Italy. And this lab was useful for me because I made all my mistakes in this lab. So usually I came and I say, oh, maybe it's Zama King who is the main character or not. And I try to test everything. And when I finished to test all these bad directions, I took 3 months and I wrote the script.
Okay.
It's my way of working. I have a plan, but I have not a treatment. I have not a 20-page. I don't want to know exactly the story.
So you just kind of like to experience it almost as a viewer in front of your computer as you're writing.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, so when you sit down to write, do you give yourself a certain page count that you want to hit each day, or do you decide to work for a certain amount of hours?
I work each day. I write at morning. I started to write, and when I'm tired, I made some research. Afternoon, at night, I read again, and I put some remarks. I like to write. I like it because I started to write before making cinema. So writing is important for me, but not as a novelist. I like scripts because script is not a bestseller. It's not a piece of master. It's only a step
Sure.
to another thing. Yeah.
Well, so what do you do when you get writer's block? That point in which you feel like you can't write anymore and you feel lost. Some writers experience it, some writers don't. What do you do if you get it?
Yeah, I work with as you can see in my film, there's different parts, there's different styles. In one style, there's different stories. So yeah. I'm usually I lose myself usually. So I work party by party. Yeah. And after one party, maybe I will make a pause 2 weeks and I will continue. If I write 3 days, and for example, now I'm writing a new script, and after 3 days, I decided I felt that it was boring, so I stopped. Yeah, okay. I stopped, and I decided to continue in 1 month with new ideas, with fresh ideas. Yeah, it's my way of writing.
That's great. I mean, this is what I love about interviewing screenwriters all over the world, is that there's no one way to do it. And, what you just described, a lot of writers do, in which they pick up on something else that they're interested in, and they put something aside when they need to, and know that they'll come back to it. So yeah. As you said, it took you 3 months to do your first draft. How many other revisions did you do after that first draft?
After that, I made a free draft to one, two, because my first draft is like a second draft, because I try to write the last script directly. So when I think that it's the last, it's a second draft. So okay. So yeah, but and sometimes we went after these 3 months, we went directly to Avance sur Recette CNC in France, and we got it at first time. So it means that it's not just an illusion. And I worked also with my artistic collaborator and with the producer of Night of the Kings, Delphine Jacquet. She doesn't write, but she is behind, and she reads everything, and she gives notes, lot of notes each week. And we have a meeting, we discuss about these remarks, and after I write again. So I think that it's a co-writing.
You also have pre-production is really important as a director. I'm curious, did you actually shoot at Maka prison facility, or was it a different prison that you shot at?
We shot the beginning of the film outside around La Maca, the real Maca, but we rebuilt everything. It's a set. We didn't want to shoot in La Maca because about security, about time. It was very difficult. We decided to control our shoot, our set. So with my set designer Samuel Tesser, we built a prison in Bassam near Abidjan. We took 2 buildings, 2 old colonial buildings, and we made this prison. It's not exactly La Maca. It's a mix between La Maca, prison from South America, prison from Sierra Leone, Liberia. But it was important for me to have a very, very precise details. So all the drawings, all the paints who are on the wall in this prison comes from real drawings or real paintings from a prison. I didn't want to make something nice, because in a prison there is nothing who is nice. Everything has its sense.
You have a really interesting production, because you have not only the realism of the prison, but you also kind of get into magical realism, which we'll talk more about in the spoilers section. But I'm curious, since you had some special effects in the movie, did you have like a long storyboarding process to kind of plan for those special effects, or do anything else to prepare for the special effects sequences?
Yeah, these special effects, of course, when we work with special effects, it's better to have a storyboard because it's very expensive, it's very long, it's very complex, and a storyboard It's a book. It's
a
a
blueprint.
It's a plan for everybody, for all this crew, all collaborators. Even if I don't make storyboard for shooting, if it's not special effects or if it's not an action scene, I will not make a storyboard. I think sometimes it's killed something. It's not alive when you have a storyboard. It's my way. But for this special effect, the most important thing was I'm not a fan of special effects. I like special effects if it has something to do in the story. And in Night of the Kings, there's a big scene, a mystical fight.
We'll get to it in the spoiler section, yes, I promise.
Between a queen and a king, and this special effects is here only to say the African mystic. Yeah, because in Africa, in Ivory Coast, in West Africa, you can have mystical fights when people can transform them in a bird, in a lion, in an elephant. So it was to give our culture, to give our vision. I use this special effect in this sense.
It worked great. Just two last questions before we get into the spoilers. You have a lot of people in your scenes. Like there's a lot of extras, and they have a lot going on, ranging from dancing to singing. And I'm just curious, for that many people, did you have an extended rehearsal period to be able to get all that straight before you were on set shooting?
We had on the set 300 person, 300 extras, but with my casting director, we met 2,000 people during 2 years, and we selected 40 person first: martial art fighters, dancers, griots, singers, new actors. And after this, we worked with 25% of our extras are ex-prisoners.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because we wanted, because you can't create this feeling to be in a prison. It's a special feeling, and I wanted people who got this idea, this memory. It was important for me. For example, there is one scene between Blackbird, the chief of the prison, and a Roman in a room at night. And I put, for this scene, I put a ventilator, and one actor, one extra who was a prisoner came to see me, and he said, "No, in La Maca, we don't put ventilator at night because of the forest. It's very cold." Yeah, so they were our advisor on the set. We worked like this, and they brought the experience also for other actors, other extras. So it was very nice.
I'm curious. Last question before the spoiler section. What was your budget and your schedule?
My budget was $2 million, €2 million, and we shot 36 days.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's good. 36 days. That's a good, healthy shoot.
Yeah, it was very short.
All right. Well, so, for anybody that's listening or watching this on YouTube, we are getting into the spoilers now. So if you have not seen The Night of the Kings, please press pause, go see The Night of the Kings. You can find it anywhere that you've been used to watching movies online during the pandemic. It's very easy to find. Go rent it, come back, and then finish the rest of this interview, because we are getting into the spoilers right now. So Philippe, I guess one place to start was, what I love about the movie is it's really about storytelling, because obviously Roman is tasked with, he has to tell stories for the Night of the Red Moon. And, allegedly, if he does not tell stories for the entire night, he could be killed. But I'm just curious where you were drawing inspiration for some of the stories and traditions and myths that Roman is telling, because he has an interesting arc as a character in which at first he's very shy, But then he knows that if he doesn't step up to the challenge of storyteller, he's going to lose his life. And he grows into storyteller very fast. So I'm just curious how you came up with what he was going to draw on for the stories that he told. And, that's a good place to start.
Usually in my script or in my film, people say that there is too much stories. There is a lot of stories. It's too much. So this position of Roman as a narrator who is obliged to tell stories, it was perfect for me to bring all my stories.
That makes sense.
It was perfect. So I wanted to first, of course, it's a film about a storyteller. It's a film about storytelling. It's a film to say the power of words, the power of stories against violence. And I wanted also to pay a tribute to the oral tradition in West Africa, because there is a strong oral tradition and beautiful oral tradition with griots. Griots, they have free function in West Africa. We don't say griots.
Right. Sorry to interrupt. Like, that would be great for you to define what a griot is, because Roman mentions that his aunt was a griot.
A griot, it's come from West Africa, Manding Empire, 15th century. And it's a very long tradition who continue today. It's a sort of caste, and they are storytellers. It could be a man, it could be a woman. It's a family. It's a generation by generation. They are storytellers. But griot in West Africa, in Manding, in Bambara, we don't say griots. We say jelly. It means blood. Blood. It means the material who is essential for life, and also the connection between the family, between the society. Okay, so griots, they have free function. They are storytellers, they are poets, but they are also historians. They keep the history of the kingdom. So I work with this. And so a Roman, he can say a story, a legend. He can say a real event, a political event. It's not. The border is very fine between legend, between mythology, between actualities, archives, and I wanted to give this feeling.
Basically, he's an oral historian. He comes from a line of oral historians, so that makes sense. Western audiences might not be as up to date on the concept of the microbes, which Roman was accused of being a part of, and that's why he got sent to jail. What else could you fill in for our Western audiences about why Roman went to jail as a microbe?
Roman is a young pickpocket in Abidjan Street, and he's very near a young boy who are in a gang of microbes. Microbes, it's a real gang. They exist in Abidjan. A young boy, 8 for 18. They are very violent. And microbes comes from the film, the City of God.
City of God, right, which they reference. Yeah. They talk about that in the movie.
The Brazilian film, they talk about this. So in Abidjan, a lot of young people, they watch this film without distance, and they decided, we are microbes. We are microbes. We will kill people like a Brazilian gang. Yeah. So
Philippe, that's real. That like a film.
Yeah, it's real. God. And Zama was the chief of this gang, and Zama was lynched by the population. Right. And this image were on social media. And when I watch this image, I ask myself, what's happened in my country 2 years after the Civil War? Why this violence? I wanted to have a reflection about this violence. So Roman arrived in this prison, and he is obliged to tell a story. And the only story he has is the story of Zama.
I was going to ask that next, because out of all the stories he could have told, he chooses the story of Zama. And, the head of the prisoner, the head of the prison, Blackbeard, asks, Roman why he was going to choose the story of Zama King and how it related to what was going on. And Roman doesn't really answer, but,
No,
it's a story that all the prisoners know.
He said it came like this. Yeah, because it's an emergency. But what I want to say, Roman said at the beginning that his aunt was a griot. He grew up with this aunt who is griot. And he's not sure that he has this power to tell stories. So it's a sort of coming age for him. It's a sort of a revelation in this prison. He arrived and he's not sure that he is a storyteller. And at the end, he has this power, he has this strength. So it's a positive film in this way.
Ooh, hey, I'm jumping in really quick to remind you to check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. Folks, we recently published issue 42, and there is so much to explore in there. You could read the full table of contents over at backstory.net. And, you could read us on a desktop or laptop or via the iPad app Backstory. And of course, if you've never read us before, you could test drive us by reading the free issue over at backstory.net or via the iPad app. And probably after you read that, you'll have a pretty good sense of who we are and what we do. And I hope you'll consider becoming a subscriber. And if you want to subscribe, you could use coupon code SAVE5. That's SAVE and the number 5 over at backstory.net. That will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription, and it will get you access to anything new we publish over the next year. And also, of course, to our archive, which goes back about to issue 29. And we're adding older issues as we get time. So we're trying to add another one this week. Look, there's amazing things in the latest issue. We have Simon Kinberg's first screenplay that he ever sold in his entirety, along with an interview with Simon. We have, great interviews with showrunners, filmmakers, comic book writers, playwrights. There's so much to explore. So I really hope you check it out and consider becoming a subscriber. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right back into our conversation with writer-director Philippe Lacôte about his latest film, The Night of the Kings. So before Roman arrives, we kind of get the setup that there's a power struggle going on in the prison, in which we know the Blackbeard, who we see is on oxygen for much of the story. He's nearing his death. And there's a tradition that, when the leader is nearing his death, they and can no longer lead, they need to commit suicide. They need to take their own lives so someone else could take over. At what point did you realize that was going to be the other part of the story here, this transference of power in the prison?
First, I will say that the title in French of the film, it's La Nuit des Rois. And La Nuit des Rois, it's the French title of the piece of Shakespeare, Twelfth Night. Yeah. So when you say La Nuit des Rois, in French, we know exactly that it's about power. It's about fight around power, about power. It was important for me to have two stories. The story of Roman, who is obliged to tell stories, but the prison is a real place. The prison exists before Roman, before this decision to tell stories or not. So I wanted to show how the prison works, how with this code, with this law, with these beliefs. One of these beliefs is the chief must die if he is sick, because body is very important in prison, and the red moon is another belief. But I wanted to observe prisoner. For me, prison is like a society. It's a society without guards, without administration. Prison is a society. It's for this. I took time with small packet of cigarettes with a message to show exactly how they have communication, how they have sex.
That was a good scene in which you show the string around the pack of cigarettes and it's being lowered, and that's how they're passing around a particular note. That was actually cool to see.
Yeah, because how you speak in a prison, how you have sexuality in a prison, different things. And I wanted also to show this fight about power with an old tradition. Blackbird, the chief, is old, and there is newcomers, new young boy. They are more capitalist. They said, he said, prisoner will not be our slaves, they will be our client. We want to make business with them. We don't want to make violence. So I wanted to show these two generations.
Yeah, right. Because that was the younger generation that was saying that, because they wanted to take over from Blackbeard. I also found it really interesting that Roman is a fish out of water, right? Because he's coming into the prison new. So it's a good way for the audience to experience the traditions of the prison. And what was so wild was once Roman starts telling his story, people are singing around him. People are telling the story through interpretive dance. And he just kind of gives them a look for a second, like, what's going on? But he knows he has to keep continuing. What gave you the idea to have the story told in that way, in which, because he's telling a popular story about Zama the king, that people are just joining in whenever they want, and Roman has to keep going? I thought it was a really cool way to tell the story, especially all the beautiful singing that was going on as he was telling it.
Yeah, but can you imagine this film with Roman telling his stories and people like this?
Yeah, that's true.
Without moving. It was no. I didn't want to use. I didn't want to use the prison only as a place to start a story, and have flashback and come back, and I wanted to put this story inside the prison, inside bodies of prisoners. Prisoners are participants. They create also this story. At the beginning, Roman is alone. He starts to develop his stories, but at the end, he's not alone. All the prison plays the same story, and you have singers, you have dancers, you have players. They replay something, or they play what Roman says. They play the queen, they play a bird, they play a scorpion, and yeah, because bodies are very important in prison, and I wanted to engage bodies in this story.
It was really wild, especially when it got into the interpretive dance, and he's just kind of sitting there trying to clock what's going on, see the people dancing around him and singing, and realize that the story was basically going to be an interactive experience, which I thought was really cool.
And I think when you have this first, when he starts the story of Zama, after one bad beginning, one bad entry, one second entry, he started the good story. And you come back in the prison and you have all these bodies, all these dancers, and you say, oh, something crazy will happen. Yeah, you are ready as an audience, you are ready to go in another place, to forget your position, your convention, and accept this journey, this travel.
Well, that was the other thing that I really liked about it, is that once he knows that the story of Zama is only going to last so long, he gets into older myths of West Coast culture, and he's talking about kings and queens, and it becomes very mysterious and mythological. And I'm curious at what point you realized the story was going to go in that direction, in which it's now like a story within a story, predating Zama and going back in history.
Roman is a very good storyteller. Even if at the beginning he says that he's not a storyteller, but he's a very good storyteller. So at the beginning, he knows how to play with the audience. He knows how to play with the audience. He knows that he will give the story of Zama King. So he used all this. I will say. I thought a lot about Sherazade to build Roman, because Sherazade in Arabian Nights, she has also this death.
Right.
If she stopped, if she finishes her story, she will die. So Roman is in the same situation. And when you put this emergency, you have a lot of tweaks. I will say Roman has a lot of tweaks. He say, "Oh, I started my story by the end. I need to to start with the beginning. And like this, he has different words and only very good storytellers like Salman Rushdie, like Terrence Malick, like Akira Kurosawa, like Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Only very good storytellers as these tricks, as these words to go and come back and go here and forget this, okay, add this. So it was a pleasure for me to write and to direct this subject.
So how much was Roman making up per se about the past history with the king and the queen, and then the fantastical battle where elephants are changing into other things and birds are over the place, there's fire? Because I just the imagery alone of the two towers and the two different tribes gathered behind each tower and this mythological battlefield in between them was just really beautiful and really cool. And I'm curious if you were going and adapting previous myths, or if you were creating your own.
We had this idea, and I will say that in Ivory Coast, you can find in the same, you can find today different times. I give an example. For example, the soldiers of the Queen who are in the film, they are real hunters, soldiers, dozo, traditional hunters in Ivory Coast, in West Africa, and they came to play their own role. But you will see that they have traditional clothes with mystical things, with different things from one century, and they have Nike shoes or Puma shoes sometimes. So it's not a contradiction for us. We have different times in the same space. And when you the story of the Queen, 20% of the population in Ivory Coast comes from Ghana, and their stories, it's that they are the queen, and this queen offered his child to cross the river. So for us, it's not very, very far. It's a story we are near our daily life. And all these mystical things are really our life. For us, it's not mystic. It's our reality. It's our vision.
It was a beautiful sequence. And, one of the things that was fun was, aside from the big storytelling scenes, there's even a break where Blackbeard and Roman, talk for a while and, just one-on-one. And you get a little bit of Blackbeard's past. And I thought it was cool to kind of break into that. How important was it for you to show characters' past? Because, it kind of takes away some of the mystery, but it also adds more to them. And I really like the pirate story that he told of, how he got the title Blackbeard.
Yeah, I like to tell stories, past of characters, but always in a mystery, always to keep a mystery. So for Blackbeard, he's sick. He is near his death. He is in his room, and he's in front of Roman. It's a only scene when they are together. And I said, okay, it will be funny if Blackbeard tell a story to Roman, because always Roman is obliged to tell a story. So now Blackbeard will tell a story, and Blackbeard is near his death. He has a lot of he's very nostalgic, and he tell a story when he was child, when maybe it was the first time he went to steal something. Yeah. And how he got his name. And this story is a real story because it's a friend of mine it's his life like this. So I use this to give it to Blackbeard.
You made a really interesting ensemble cast for the prison, showing the different ways of prison life. And I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the character of Sexy, because, Sexy is an inmate that's transgender and basically is the one person these incarcerated people could all visit, for sex, or at least one of the people. And it seems like Sexy navigates between all the different power structures in the prison, almost putting Sexy as a force of power, in and of herself. Tell us about creating the character of Sexy and how, Sexy could make it through the regime change and everything else, because it's an important part of their power struggle ecosystem.
Yeah, Sexy. When I built the character of Sexy, because in prison I was obliged or to be with men or to be with women. It was not possible to have a mix, and I didn't want to make a masculine film. I wanted to have a sort of femininity inside this prison, but I was only with men. So I decided to have this character of transgenre of Sexy, and it's a character who is very interesting because she's outside in public. She's very there's a lot of humiliation about Sexy, but in private, she's a goddess. So I wanted to show this balance. Outside, they say, oh, she's a transgender, but she's very important, and she's the center of Eros in this prison. Yeah, and also she's a connection because she has a real love story with Lass, a man who wants to be the chief. So she's useful because she's a connection. People from Blackbird, people from Lass, everybody go to see Sexy. So it's possible to use Sexy to have a conflict or to have a murder or something.
Well, right, so, because she participates in the murder of Kobe at some point.
But Sexy is also connected with Roman because they are the big desire of this prison. Sexy it's a sexual desire, and Roman it's a story desire because they prepare Roman. He put a blue dress, something like this. So Roman is like a king in this prison, and all eyes are on Roman. And I wanted to give this feeling of desire in prison.
That's great. It's also interesting that basically the prisoners do not kill Roman, because even though as the night is going by, there's a few times where they've decided that he's concluded the story, and he's like, well, let me go back, and he keeps telling the story. Was there ever a draft that you wrote where Roman did not survive the night?
No. There was a draft when police tried to go with Roman in another place, but it was too complicated to shoot. So I decided to finish like this. But no, I didn't see Roman killed because I wanted, as I say at the beginning, I wanted to give the power of storytelling. Stories are stronger than violence for me.
I loved that, Blackbeard, when he's going to kill himself at the end, he said beforehand that he will return, his spirit will return in a doe in the forest. And I thought it was really beautiful that after that scene, you cut to a doe suddenly like looking up in the forest, showing that his myth, his narrative has come true. And I thought that was interesting.
You must tell it to my Canadian producer, because he wanted to cancel this sequence.
Interesting. Well, so what did you have to do to fight to keep it?
But first, I will say that at the shooting, my cinematographer, my crew, they didn't understand exactly this sequence. So I tried again on editing, and everybody was like this. But I think it's very important for the character of Blackbird. And it's always this life, our life in Africa, in West Africa, in Ivory Coast, between dead people, alive people, invisible world, visible world, mystical things, realistic things. The border is very fine, and we like, and we go one side to another side, and it's our life like this.
That makes sense. I'm curious, did you have any other ways that Blackbeard was going to commit suicide? I thought it was interesting that he was, submerged into this tank on his own, and he has this, ladder that he climbs down. I thought that was an interesting way, and I'm just curious if there were any other ways that you toyed with, not to be too grim here.
I don't know.
Okay, so that was the way it was always going to be.
Yeah, I think.
Okay. And, I'm curious about the chief of the prison, the police officer, because right as the power struggle is starting, after we know that Blackbeard has died, you have a fight that breaks out, and a riot is breaking out, and the head officer of the prison has said earlier this is the only prison run by inmates, and he wants to change that, and he just takes his gun and starts shooting into the crowd, and he kind of kills off the heads of both groups that were getting ready to fight, leaving a void of power for the moment. So I'm curious how you came up with that conclusion, and were there other endings that you toyed with?
Nivakin, this character called Nivakin, it's a old guard in this prison. He spent a lot of time in this prison, and he's depressed about everything because in this prison it's not possible he can't make his job because the real chief of the prison is a prisoner. So, but he don't want to put order. It's a sort of explosion. Yeah, and at the end it's too much for him. This people who fight, who cry, everything. So without thinking, he start to shoot. But in one way, he has a real connection with Roman. He's very interested by Roman, by the destiny of Roman. And this 5 minutes when he shot everywhere, it's this 5 minutes who give to Roman the sun. So it's the guy who helped Roman at the end. Because if not, Roman will be killed in 5 minutes.
Because he won't make it to the sunrise, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And after this shot, there is sunrise, and Roman is free. So it's more complex.
That was cool. I didn't realize that he was buying him time so much as just taking out the power structure, but that makes sense now that you say it, that he was buying him time as well.
He gave 5 crucial minutes to Roman.
I forgot to ask earlier, but there is one white character in the prison who's basically like a soothsayer. I think his name is Silence, if I got it right. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so tell us about the significance of the character of Silence, in a movie where so much of it about happening is talking. So many things are going through, oral tradition. But it's interesting that there's a character named Silence who's basically advising, Roman on how to stay alive.
Silence, it comes from a cartoon, BD, a Belgium designator, Comes. He has a BD with a character Silence, and it's a beautiful character. So my way of working is to use different things. It's like a collage, and it's like a tribute also. So Silence, I took this name from Comes. And Silence is played when I was child, and I traveled. I would say I traveled to La Maca. I visited La Maca. There was a few white people and few white women who were in La Maca, and I kept this memory of their faces, their voice. There was one guy who had a voice, special voice for me as a child, and I wanted to relate this experience to have a white man inside this prison. But of course, a white man in a prison in Africa, he couldn't be at the center of power. He was obliged to be around, to be in silence, to be mute, to be less expressive. So I decided with Denis Lavant, actor of Leos Carax, Oli Motos, I decided to build this figure, this mute figure like this. But Silence is also the best friend of Roman. He's a guy who will give the key to Roman. because he knows everything. He heard everything in this prison. And you speak about storytelling, you speak about silence. It was important to make a balance. If you have a character who tell a lot of stories, it was important to have a character who doesn't speak.
That's a great way to say it. Editing is the last stage of storytelling. And I'm curious what you learned about your film and the editing process. If there were any big scenes that you cut out and you learned a lesson from, or scenes that you were like, oh, this is going to be great when we film it, but by the time you got to editing, you realize, no, it's not moving the story forward. I got to lose it. So I'm curious, what was your editing process like and the lessons you learned?
Not really. There was one sex scene between Sexy and Lass in the bed in the cell of Lass. I wanted to show this intimity and a real love between Sexy and another prisoner, but they were not comfortable actors. They were not comfortable to play, I will say, a gay homosexual scene. So it was not natural. So I decided to cut this scene. And I think that Sexy is more beautiful like this, with lot of suggestion. You don't see a sex scene, but you imagine that
sure.
the sex scene is next the door. So yeah, I decided to cut this scene.
And you left it to the imagination, so that makes sense.
Yeah, editing was, and also I didn't want to show sex. I want to have imagination. I didn't want to show violence. I want to put also in imagination, because it's more stronger when you don't know what they will make to roman. You can imagine everything. Yeah. So I like, as a director, as a filmmaker, I like to play with the mind, with the imagination of the spectator.
You're also the director, but also the writer. So I'm curious, was there any point during production that you realized you needed to rewrite something while you were shooting?
I'm also a part in production, because I'm a part in production in Ivory Coast, and I will say that I'm a director. I worked a lot in production. I'm a director. When I write, I think about production in the same time. I don't write something who is impossible. Long time, I watched a documentary about a line producer in Hollywood, and he said, I'm here to stop when I read one cowboy will kill one Indians. I say, no, it's too much. It's too expensive. So I have this way of working to write what is possible to shoot. I'm very near the economy, because it's not possible in another way. For this film in Ivory Coast, cinema industry is very young, and we don't have a lot of money. And I think if we want to continue, if we want to have partners, if we want people will trust us, we need to be responsible to follow our budget.
Sure.
Yeah, it's important.
I mean, that's true. Producers love folks that can get it done for the right budget. So that makes sense. I'm curious, as we're starting to run out of time, what was your toughest scene as both a writer on the page and then a director while you were shooting? So it could be two different scenes if you want. But what was your toughest scene, and how did you creatively rise to the challenge?
I will say that when I write, when I'm a writer, when I write my script, at this time I started to be a director, because I don't write words. I write my vision as a director. For me, the script must be invisible. I don't need a script. A script is a window or is a door, and when I open this door, I see my film, and everybody must see my film when they start to read my script. So for me, it's I make editing when I'm writing. The editing started, and everything. I write more like an actor to give emotion or to find the emotion of each actor, each character. So it's not writing, say, script. It's not writing, it's directing.
Well, so in that regards, what was your toughest scene to create? What do you remember the scene that you remember coming back to again and again to revise and just trying to get right, both as a writer and a director, or you could just pick one or the other. But I'm curious the scene that was really tough for you to conceive and then how you rose to that challenge.
There's some scenes who were very difficult, particularly this scene between Roman and Blackbird in this room, because it's at the middle of the film, and I wanted to make a sort of mirror to inverse everything.
Sure.
And and it was the moment where Blackbird must give his last sentence, and it was the moment when Roman I must show that Roman become more stronger, and he will take his destiny. He will go to fight. It's the first time he had the courage to ask a question to Blackbird, to say, why you don't stay, if you are sick, why you don't stop this game? Yeah, so it was a crucial scene, and the dialogues were very important. And I wanted also to tell the past of Blackbird. So I spent a lot of time on this scene to find the best words, to find the best attitude, and
it's a great scene. Your hard work definitely shows in it. You know, I'm curious because by the end, with most of the people in power dead, and Roman makes it through the night. Do you think this means that Roman could become the next leader? Yeah, I think because there is no leader in this prison at the end. Alfmad is dead. Lass is nothing because he lost the fight against Alfmad, and Blackbird is dead. So I think the character who has a real power is Roman. Yeah, is Roman. So maybe the remake in USA next year. There you go. That'll be what does it next. Well, look. Distributed by Neon. Good. Well. So listen. Tell me this. What's next? You did a fantastic job on this film, and I'm curious what you're working on next. It's very open. Because after Night of the King, as you can see, I can make a martial art film. I can make a musical comedy. It's a sort of musical comedy, or there's several directions for my work now. And I started to work with CA agency with Brian Kent. So I read different scripts from independent producer from US and studio also. So we don't know exactly, but personally, I work on a script. I work on a new script, always about a legend, always about imagination. Because in Africa, in West Africa, we are sure that if you steal gold, you have your family will have a malediction until 7 generations. So I want to tell the story of this different people of this family. The first one is in 12th century in Africa when Muslims came, and he stole gold. And after you will have different members of this family when there is a French colonization, and we will finish in Harlem, in New York, with the last member of this generation. And all these members of this family, they have a particular talent. They have a beautiful voice as a muezzin, as a singer, as a different way. That sounds incredible. And what's the title of it, if you have a title?
The working title is Lives of Golden Thieves.
Wow, that's great. Well, look, I love Night of the Kings. I think you did an absolutely fantastic job with it, and you were so generous with your time today. Philippe, thanks for coming down. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Special thanks again to writer-director Philippe Lacôte for being so generous with his time and showing up to discuss his latest film, Night of the Kings. And I really hope you'll check it out and search it out. It's great to support independent films, and there's just some great ideas and some wild storytelling in this one as well. Of course, while you're surfing around online, I hope you'll also check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. You can read us on a desktop or laptop, or of course through our iPad app, Backstory. And folks, you could see our latest table of contents to see all the amazing content inside. You could test drive us by reading the free issue. And if you like what you see, I hope you consider becoming a subscriber. And if you want to subscribe, you could use coupon code SAVE5. That's SAVE and the number 5. That'll save you $5 off a 1-year subscription. And it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and Backstory Magazine YouTube watchers come on down and become subscribers. The Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith podcast is a copyright of Unlikely Films Incorporated in 2021. All rights reserved. Folks, if you want to get a hold of me, you could always find me as Yo Goldsmith on Twitter or Yo Goldsmith on Instagram, or I'm also running the Backstory Magazine accounts of Backstory_mag on Twitter or Backstory_mag on Instagram. I have a Facebook fan page. I hardly ever check it, but I'll get better about that this year, I promise. And of course, you could always email me, yogoldsmith@gmail.com. I promise to not respond immediately, but I'll do my best to get back to you. So I'm an easy guy to find. Look, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, the publisher of Backstory Magazine and the host of the Q&A, thanking you for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.